Some months ago in Canmore, when I got up to preach the sermon, I dropped my cane, and it made a terrible noise. But then I looked up, and I had everybody's attention. I've been tempted to try that again, but I won't do it here. But there is a question that I'd like for you to consider before we begin, or at the beginning. What would you be willing to give or exchange for the glory of this world? The wealth of this world? The prestige that this world has? What would you be willing to exchange? Now, I think most of you would immediately answer, I wouldn't give anything in exchange for the glory of this world. But are you sure? You see, thousands have and thousands are today paying a tremendous price for the glory of this world. I think of some characters in the Bible that might fit into this category. I think of Saul, the first king of Israel. He started out with a very humble beginning, but it wasn't very long before he started to do various things in order to have prestige and glory. And then there was Balaam, that true prophet of God, who sold out truth because he was interested in the money that he saw. He died, by the way, in a battle with Israel, against Israel. And then we could look at others. Judas, for instance, who sold his Lord for 30 pieces of silver, the price of a common slave. But in all of the annals of Bible history, I don't suppose that there is anyone that so graphically portrays the price of glory as Pontius Pilate, the governor of Judea. Here was one man's struggle in order to gain honor, to gain prestige, to gain this world. When Archelaus, the son of Herod the Great, was deposed from being the king of Judea, he was not allowed, or Judea was not allowed, to have another king, but a governor was appointed by the emperor. He was called the procurator, agent of the emperor. Pilate was this agent of the emperor between AD 26 and AD 36. He was a Roman soldier that had become a politician, and he brought along with him a lot of the characteristics of a Roman soldier. Headstrong, wanting his own way, and yet not able to make up his mind on important decisions. The relationship between Pilate and the Jews had never been a very friendly one. When he first came to power, he looked over the territory that he was to be in charge of, and he noticed something strange. There wasn't any Roman flags flying in the city of Jerusalem. Jerusalem was the last little bit of, well, I don't know if I could say that it was their college, a conference of it. But anyhow, he was determined that the flags would fly across all of the territory that he was to be king of. And so he had his soldier to bring in the Roman flags during the cover of darkness one night. And when the Jews looked up into the sky above their sacred city, they saw the flags of the hated Romans. The city flew into an uprage. And in order to keep them from completely revolting, he took the flags down. A little bit later, Jerusalem needed a new water system, a new viaduct. He agreed to build it for them, and I'm sure that they were happy that their governor would build a new water system for them. But in order to pay for it, he reached into the temple and took the sacred money of the Jews in order to pay for it. This again, the city of Jerusalem flew into an uprage. And this time, Pilate refused to back down, but he put down the revolt with a bloody massacre. A short time later, he had a great idea, he thought, one that would make him very acceptable to the Emperor Tiberius. He had shields, votive shields of worship, carrying the inscription of Tiberius. Now, if the Jews had learned anything from the Babylonian captivity, it was to keep away from idolatry, from worshiping idols. This was, again, the city of Jerusalem flew into an uprage, and he backed down? No. But Tiberius Caesar had to step into the situation and command that he take the shields away. As you can see, the relationship between the Jews and Pilate had never been a very cozy one, not very friendly. In fact, we have in the Bible one indication of his in this 13th chapter of Luke. There were present at that season some who told him of the Galileans whose blood Pilate had mingled with their sacrifices. Here he had killed some individuals that were worshiping their God. So the relationship between the Jews and Pilate had never been a very friendly one. But there was one thing that he always did for the Jews. At their suggestion, he would sign the death warrants without any thought or consideration. He had dreams for the future. He had dreams for someday being elevated up from the miserable little province of Judea to being governor of all of Syria, and then perhaps to be called back to Rome. And he was determined to carry out his responsibilities in signing the death warrant that they brought to him. Early one spring morning in AD 31, he was disturbed from his rest and brought to see a prisoner. He was irritated, to say the least. He was determined to get his job done and get it done quickly. And he turned to see what kind of a prisoner the Jews the Jews had brought to him this time, when he turned and looked into the face of Jesus, something happened to Pilate. He remembered hearing about Jesus. Others had told him about it. His wife had told him. And he was determined that he would make the Jews produce their evidence, and he would give this man a fair trial. He took Jesus aside to investigate him. You find this in the 18th chapter of John, beginning with verse 33. Then Pilate entered the praetorium and called Jesus. And he said to Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Now, Jesus didn't answer him directly, but he said, are you sure that you're not just repeating something that you have heard? I read this. My kingdom is, where am I? Are you speaking of yourself about this, or did others tell it thee of me? In other words, Jesus was trying to draw him out to make a commitment to himself. Even in this time of desperateness for Jesus, he was willing to try to save Pilate. Pilate was pretty unhappy. He answered and said, "Am I a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priests have delivered you to me. What have you done?" And then Jesus went on, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then my servants would fight, so that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now my kingdom is not from hence." Pilate therefore said to him, "Are you a king then?" Pilate could not get away from the fact that Jesus was more than just a mere man. He read in the face of Jesus the peace and the serenity that he wished he had for his own soul. And Pilate therefore said to him, "Art thou a king?" And Jesus said, "You have said rightly. For this cause I was born, and for this cause I came into the world, that I should bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice." And Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" Jesus had now led Pilate to ask one of the most supreme questions of the human experience. What is truth? In the next few moments, he would have opened up to Pilate the vistas of eternal truth that would have changed his mundane life. There's only one problem. Pilate said, "What is truth?" And we had said this. He went out again to the crowd. The pressing responsibilities of life came upon him. The responsibilities seemed to be to usher in what he could about Jesus. He went out to them and he said, "I find no fault in him." But rather than to be a man of conviction, of his own convictions, he tried to find some way to escape. And upon hearing that Jesus was from Galilee, he went and said, "Oh, this is Herod's responsibility. It's Herod's territory." Herod was in the city of Jerusalem at this time, and he sent the Jews, the soldiers, the Jewish mob, the Jewish leaders over to Herod. But Herod too refused to bear any responsibility. And it wasn't very long before Pilate found himself in a very uncomfortable position. The Jews, the Pilate and the prisoner were back in Pilate's judgment hall. And so he said to the people, "You know, I find no fault in him. He's innocent." And I, in my imagination, can see a man coming, elbowing his way through the crowd, and he comes up to Pilate and thrusts a letter into Pilate's hands. It was a letter from his wife. You know, that must have been an unusual experience. Certainly, Pilate's wife wasn't accustomed to sending a letter to Pilate as he was in judging a case. So he opened this letter very carefully and quickly he discovered what this letter contained. I read about this in the book of Matthew, the 26th chapter of Matthew. Verse 19, while he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent to him, saying, "Have thou nothing to do with this man? I have suffered many things in a day because of him." And when he read that, he turned pale. He started to shake. And he was determined that he was not going to do anything to take the life of this man. However, something else came up. He was looking for some way to escape his responsibility. And then he thought, you know, these people out here are just common individuals. They are, what would you say? They're just being mob psychology. They're coming along with whatever he had to say. And so he said, I know what I'll do. At this time of the year, every year, the governor of Judea would free a prisoner. So he picked a real bad man. He picked Barnabas, son of the father is the name. Now his father was the devil, not anywhere near what he was involved with. So he left him. and he brought out Barabbas. And he placed Barabbas right next to Jesus and said, "Now, which man here do you want me to free? Jesus, the King of the Jews, or Barabbas?" Barabbas was a murderer. He was an individual that had created a dissension in Israel. Yes. And you would have thought that the people would have said, "Let us have Jesus." But the leaders of the Jews went among the Jewish people and encouraged them to ask for Barabbas. "Barabbas," they said, "give us Barabbas." And so this plan of his came to a conclusion. But then he came up with another idea. Remind you, it was not a very good idea, but it was an idea. He said, "I tell you, I'll have him whipped, publicly so, and then I'll set him free." And now the Jews knew that they had Pilate where he wanted him. If he would give in a little, he would give in more. And so more and more they cried for the crucifixion of Jesus. To send him to the cross, they were saying. And he was very upset. His mind was confused. Every time he tried to save Jesus, something happened. And finally, Pilate gave in. Why did he give in? He gave in because he was afraid of losing his position in this world. He was afraid that the people of Israel would become upset and he would be responsible for him. And so they called more and more for the crucifixion of Jesus. And finally he gave in. Oh yes, he washed his hands as if to show that he had no responsibility here. But he never got away from the fact that he was the one that caused Christ to go to Calvary. What a different story the life of Pilate might have been. What a blessing he could have been at this moment of trial. Jesus had to die, but he didn't need to die at the hands of Pilate. So he sold out for the glory of this world. What a different story it could have been. Think of what he could have done to preserve the early Christian church as it was going about to conquer the world for Jesus. Think of what he could have done. But he paid the price of worldly glory and ended up bankrupt for eternity. And you know, we cannot succeed where he failed. I would like to urge each and every one of you to look deep into your own soul and make sure that you have followed the Bible completely, that you have not sacrificed or compromised for the sake of this world. There is coming a time when Jesus will again invade this world in person. This is a time when he will come and take home with him those who have made him supreme in their lives. This is the second coming of Christ. It may not be far in the future. So I plead with you to examine your soul. And when Jesus comes, he will then take you to be a part of his kingdom. And you will really know what glory really is. I believe that the closing hymn is 290.